Ladies and gentlemen, it has been announced that Donald Trump is going forward with 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. The tariffs will add a 25% fee on all Mexican and Canadian exports coming across the borders. And so the way that this is going to be swung by the left, we know with tariffs back in January, everyone was talking about it. Trump decided to delay it, but it's going to be swung like, well, the American consumer ends up paying for it because it is the U.S. companies that have to foot the bill of the tariff. But the idea is to incentivize more domestic production for U.S. companies, and that takes time. So this could create a short-term price spike, but it's a long-term solution to an overall problem that makes the United States more independent and less reliant on Mexico, Canada, and also China. Trump is hitting China now. He's upped another 10% on their tariffs, so he's got 20% tariffs on China as well. But it's important to understand when it comes to tariffs, you might be dealing with a short-term price increase depending on the sectors that are getting hit with the tariffs, because you've got companies in the United States that are going to have to produce things for a little bit more, at least when it comes to them adjusting to either importing and paying the tariff, which would make the United States more money, or just making stuff in the United States in general. And that's why Trump says in tweets, if you produce and you make your product in the US, you get zero tariffs. That's the whole point. There's another angle to this that's potentially Trump, Canada, and Mexico reworking a trade deal, because we would presume what's going to happen, the way they'll swing it is, oh, the no one wins in a trade war, tariffs are bad for everyone. But it's very clear they're worse for both Mexico and Canada, because those countries rely on U.S. companies buying their things. And so if you don't have that, if you have U.S. companies saying, we're going to be hit with a tariff, we need to go elsewhere, really not go elsewhere, just stay in the country to make our own stuff rather than outsource it, then you're going to have a lot of Canadians not too happy. You're going to have a lot of people in Mexico dealing with financial strain, and that would give Trump the leverage to possibly renegotiate the North American trade agreement the United States, Canada, and Mexico have, which would give Trump and America an even better trade deal with both Mexico and Canada. The renegotiation for that is scheduled to, or it's called a review, not a renegotiation, scheduled to happen in 2026. So the thought is, as the months go on, right now Canada is talking a big game. They're doing the whole reciprocal tariffs. We have where is it right here? Canada will retaliate with 25% tariffs on billions worth of U.S. goods as Trump's tariff deadline passes. You can see China imposed 10 to 15% tariffs on the U.S. as well. And I do think, just as a general sense, the average American independent is a lot more accepting of a tariff against China rather than a tariff against either Mexico or Canada, just because China is seen as more of a major adversary. And also there's this negative connotation about China taking U.S. jobs because of how easy and cheap it is to produce things in their country because of the lax labor laws, which is correct. But when you're talking about our number one and number two trade partner, people would say, well, China's number one. They're not. The number one is Canada. The number two is Mexico. Or maybe that flip. Maybe now Mexico is number one. But Mexico and Canada are both 1 and 2. So if you're talking about generating serious revenue in the form of tariffs, the way you would do that is you would hit both China, or really all three, but specifically Mexico and Canada, with heavy tariffs. And 25% tariffs are certainly pretty heavy. And if the companies within the United States want to keep outsourcing, they're going to be hit with a serious tariff, and that's going to create revenue for the government. The payoff in this all, even if this does not generate jobs for the United States, is the revenue that we get from the tariffs. And the idea there would be for Trump to, we know there are Republicans, you hear DeSantis, Ramaswamy, others talking about eliminating property taxes, eliminating income taxes. Well, the revenue generation from the tariffs would be a way, if we're able to expand on these tariffs and they end up working, it would be a way for the U.S. to possibly eliminate the state income tax. And so even if you are a Trump supporter and you're looking at the economy, maybe it's not in the best place right now, because you've got liberals, and this is just a talking point that is completely ridiculous. And I think the top liberals know that. The idea that in 43 days or however long it's been since Trump was inaugurated, Trump would be able to fix this, it's impossible. Even if Trump did direct things that was a hindrance to other things, like if his number one goal was to lower the cost of eggs, and he did that with no real care in the world for anything else, because when you do these things, when you maneuver things within the economy, there's always an effect. So if you want to try and lower the price on eggs, it's going to have an effect on other things. But even if Trump did that and put the policies into place, you're not going to see the price reaction in the span of a month and a half. That's not how it works. It takes a lot longer. And Trump is doing the joint session address tonight, where I'm sure they're going to yell about the eggs and stuff, and liberals are going to go crazy. But the eggs is a Biden issue because they killed a bunch of the chickens because they were scared of the bird flu. I think most people know that by now. But when it comes to something like tariffs, it's important to understand this is a long-term solution, and it's going to do one of two things. It's going to create more job growth in the United States, and you're going to get less of a reliance on other countries. Especially, you don't want reliance on China. You don't want reliance on Taiwan. How about this yesterday? I didn't hear much about this. $100 billion. The Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company, they're number one in semiconductors. $100 billion investment in the United States to produce semiconductors in the US. That's huge. With the increased Chinese control of Taiwan, we cannot be reliant on Taiwan. Joe Biden agreed with that, but he signed his little Jobs Act, or what was it, the CHIPS Act, and liberals like, oh my God, the CHIPS Act, it's amazing. It's like the number one thing they say when they talk about what Biden did good. When you look at the CHIPS Act, after Biden signed it into place, they got zero funding. There was no incentive for any semiconductors to be produced in the U.S. Trump threatens Taiwan with heavy tariffs, and now you've got Taiwan appeasing and paying $100 billion in an investment to produce semiconductor chips in the U.S., and it's very important that we get that done because of the increased control that Chinese has over Taiwan, and in turn, their semiconductor manufacturing company, which is a total powerhouse in that field. So this is all huge, but let me just get back to the point. Understand this, tariffs, it might create a short-term problem. It's a long-term solution. It's going to do one of two things. It's going to bring jobs back to the United States, inevitably, because you've got U.S. companies that are not going to want to outsource and pay these crazy tariffs. Or if they do want to pay the tariffs, that revenue generation is going to help save us on taxes. Now we're talking about 0% capital gains tax on crypto as well. So it's going to pay for itself by 2027, 2028. You're going to see things signed in. Whatever happens with these tariffs, it's either going to be way more investment on domestic production because nobody's going to want to pay these tariff prices, or it's going to be revenue generation for the U.S. government because of the tariffs, which eliminates the state income tax or property tax altogether, or it's a combination of both. Probably going to be a combination of both. Understand that's what this is. There's a lot of talking points. Oh, it just raises, it's terrible for everyone. No, the United States has way less of a reliance on Canada and way less of a reliance on Mexico than those countries do of us. That's obvious to everyone. So as the tariffs go on longer, inevitably it's going to hurt those countries more. And the longer it goes, the more leverage the United States gains, because the more desperate those countries will get, unless they can somehow start doing trade with other countries. But based on their locations, it's going to be pretty challenging, especially in a short amount of time, as these tariffs start having a serious effect and a financial strain on their economies. So we have to look at it like, maybe even worst case scenario, you're going to get a better trade deal in 2026, or maybe they'll have an emergency before then to where they renegotiate to get rid of these tariffs, because at some point Canada's going to say, we're getting killed in this, we have to have these go away. And that's the whole idea of the 51st state. I understand a lot of Trump people are saying it's not a real thing, Trump's trolling, but I'm just saying if Trump really wanted to do that, that's the way you would do it. You would force reliance on the removal of the tariffs, and Trump could say, we'll remove all the tariffs, we'll make you a territory. Well, I guess Trump wants to make him a state, but we will remove all the tariffs for you, and you'll get a one-to-one exchange, Canadian dollar, US dollar. It's going to make you way more money. Your taxes are going to go way down. There you go. There's your life raft. We created a sinking ship, but now we're giving you a life raft. It's the idea, but I don't know if that's what Trump wants to do. Maybe it's just the renegotiation, you get a better trade deal. Canada's going to be desperate. They're going to say these tariffs are killing us. Mexico's going to say these tariffs are crushing us, unless they're able to somehow quickly create trade with the EU. I know Canada's trying to get closer to the EU. All of these countries are scrambling. Republicans within the United States, Donald Trump is acting a lot more aggressively against NATO. The problem is A lot of the European countries in NATO do not share the same beliefs Republicans do in the United States. They're extremely left. Europe is extremely left. And so there's definitely a raft in terms of that. And then it's just the view on Russia. That's the number one thing that is driving the United States away from the European countries. We do not share the same worry about Russia based on our location, based on Russia's military capability. We understand they've got the nuclear bombs. That's why we're trying to avoid all of this and not escalate it. But it seems like the NATO countries inside of Europe, outside of a few, you've got Italy saying, no, we don't want escalation. You've got Poland saying, no, we don't want escalation. Pretty much all the other countries, they're going forward with military escalation, I think in hopes to get a good negotiating deal for Ukraine. Because, I mean, if they did start engaging with Russian troops, it would not be good for anyone, especially considering how close this war is to ending. But this video is not about that. The video is about the tariffs. The tariffs in 2 or 3 years are going to pay off in a huge way as long as they do what I think they're going to do. And it's very hard for the tariffs to fail in the long term. Now, in the short term, yes, you possibly will see a price increase in certain sectors where the tariffs are prominent. So that could happen, and that's going to be a liberal talking point, especially for the midterms. But understand, it's inevitable because of how strong and big the United States is. The countries we're putting tariffs on, and they could do the retaliation tariffs, reciprocal, they are going to feel it significantly more than we are. So it puts us in an even more advantageous position when it comes to a trade deal renegotiation like what's happening in 2026. We could go and renegotiate trade deals with Mexico and Canada, and these countries are dying by then because of the tariffs. And we're like, all right, we're going to take the tariffs off of you. We'll do the renegotiations, but we want X, Y, and Z. And that's what has to happen because you're getting crushed with these tariffs. So that's why the tariffs are good in general, but it brings jobs back to the United States. Our reliance on other countries gets cut. Listen, I don't think we should have zero trade with Canada and Mexico. I certainly think the 25% tariffs right now, we see what's happening to the crypto market, to the stock market. That's why I wanted Trump to just pause and not do it. But I'm saying these are a good longer term thing, which is really kind of the opposite of what you would think for Trump. Normally people say, well, Trump wants everything good now and then he's going to kill the economy when the next person comes in. No, that's not what this is. This is a longer term solution that is going to require sacrifice within the Trump administration for the next possibly 12 months because of the liberal talking point of the rising prices. But once we get more things into place with all this domestic production, I saw yesterday, it's $1 trillion investment since Trump's come into office in domestic production. That's what you're talking about, the semiconductors, along with other electronics. So many companies investing in the United States. They view Trump as a more attractive option than a Democrat when it comes to business growth within the U.S. So that is basically the story on the tariffs, and it's a longer term solution. It's going to be good long term. It might be good short term, like 5 months from now. It could. Listen, Canada might say a month from now, this is crippling us. Let's renegotiate. We'll give you more. This is all because Trump's the big thing with negotiations. Remember, we don't know what Trump is going to do. I didn't think Trump would pause the tariffs in January or what was it, February 1st or whatever, whenever it was going to go into place. I didn't think Trump was going to pause them then. So this all might just be, Canada might just say a week into these tariffs, we cannot deal with this. We have to renegotiate something. We'll give you more. What needs to happen? It might be another renegotiation. We don't know what Trump wants to do exactly. But Trump has made it known he wants there to be significant revenue generation through tariffs, which could enable the elimination of the property tax as well as the state income tax. Whether or not it happens, you have to generate like $2 trillion or you have to cut government spending, which is what the Department of Government Efficiency is trying to do. Whether or not they'll be able to do that, especially with the recent spending bill they just drafted where they're spending more, it doesn't seem likely, honestly. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.